Michelle Marie Robles Wallace, who is a memoirist, a fiction writer, a journalist, someone who's done a lot of work about issues around the border and reconciliation among people, which is a theme, of course, of utmost importance to all of us at all times, and especially in this time, fraught with all the tragic cleavages that are, being exploited by certain unfortunate people in our culture. But so we're looking forward to that. And she's one of the things she said. She's won a number of been acknowledged with a number of grants and fellowships and various and sundry awards. She has an MFA. And one of the beautiful things she said in her little biographical note was that her daughter, and her young daughter, is what was it? Not the fulcrum. What was the term used? You don't remember? It was, the crucible. I loved it. She said the daughter is kind of the crucible that pushed her imagination into unexplored realms. Kind of something very nice about it. I thought that's the attitude to have when you're a young parent, of a parent of a young person, to enjoy that exquisite opportunity, to develop in conjunction with your offspring. So that was very sweet. So I'm very delighted to invite Michelle Marie to the stage.
Thank you so much for having me. I used to live up the hill and I never made it to this reading, so I'm delighted to be here. I had a daughter when I was in my early 40s, and I think there's something that I'd always been told is once you have a kid, like your life is over, like you won't be creating anymore. Your writing and creative life is going to be pushed to the side. And I found that actually it's been the opposite. And I used the time when she was a newborn, when like 2 a.m., 2 p.m., it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. I would like start painting at 4 a.m. and like take a nap at 8 a.m. and then like do the parenting stuff. And it actually, I had sort of put everything, all of my creative work down, and having her and being a mother has allowed me to come back to it. And it's something that I like to share because I think there's so much pressure on people not to have kids because it might stifle their creativity. Anyway, I'm not a poet. I am going to read I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the beginning and the end of a short story. I think the other thing that I want to share before I start is I was sick with Lyme disease for a really long time, and I was actively dying for about a year and a half. I hooked up to an IV for over a year, and it took me, like I was in treatment for 20 years, but for about 10 years it was really intense. And of course, it being a Lyme disease, it took a long time to get diagnosed, but it also offered this opportunity when you're sort of between worlds like that and out of like the normal world. It made me sort of understand experiences, and our world is multi-layered. And so I'm just going to ask you as I read this story to allow yourself, instead of just thinking it's fiction, like what if you could speak to the dead? What if the dead are here with us? So this is called The Journey Home. And I keep my grandfather's soul in an old takeout container on a shelf in my hallway. It's one of those hard plastic soup containers with the lids that rip at your fingers when you try to open them. What it looks like is a plastic tub half filled with some dirt sitting on the nook built into the wall for the telephone, but there is a soul in there. I turned the phone shelf into an altar of sorts. I didn't plan to, but I started bringing little things home to it. Fresh flowers or shells or crystals, and somewhere along the way, I added in notes or poems and started thinking of it as an altar. I don't let my boyfriend put his cell phone or coffee cup down on it, even though it would be really convenient for that type of thing, as we're putting shoes on or lugging groceries in. I change it all the time, adding little bits of beauty and removing dead flowers or other used things. I dust it and rearrange what is there. Once I got my grandfather's soul, it was the only place in my apartment where I could see to keep a soul. So that's where he sits, waiting, reminding me of what I need to do every time I come or go. There are the facts that I know as reality, And then there are the truths that I know with my heart. I don't see with my heart at all times, but when I do, I recognize the truth as something purer and all encompassing than facts can ever be. Facts, anyway, can almost never contain the truth, although they often make up a part of it. I don't see my grandfather's soul being shaped and bobbing around in the soup container on my shelf, opalescent with colors and light every time I pass it. But if I slipped into my heart scene, I would see it there, just like I did the first time he showed it to me. It isn't often, excuse me, it doesn't happen often that I shift and move into this place of knowing. I can't control it, and I'm glad that it doesn't happen often, because when it does, it always turns my reality upside down and inside out. Like now. When I live in the factual reality, I don't go digging around in the dirt on my grandfather's grave, nor do I plan a last-minute trip to a place I can hardly lay any claim to, as much as I may want to. But when I shift, I know the things that I need to do, and I know that I must do them. Shifts usually come after a slow build of events that clamor for my attention, which I'm always slow to give. This time, it began after my grandfather passed. He'd been sick for a long time when he died. His memory had been so badly withered away that he'd forgotten how to stand up straight. I don't mean that he was hunched over in his upper back like old people get. I mean that he was folded forward at the waist, like he'd been sitting, and then when he stood up, he only straightened his knees and forgot to straighten from the hips and waist. I knew that he could stand all the way straight because sometimes, when we walked together, I'd put my fingers at the base of his spine and slowly dance them along it towards his neck. About the time that my fingers were behind his heart, he'd stand up straight until he had sat down again. When he died, it wasn't a surprise. He was 103 and had been on a slow decline for a decade. He'd lived well and fully, surmounting the obstacles in his life with grace, leaving Atlan with the end of the revolution and bounding up the coast, Mazatlan, Los Angeles, and finally San Francisco. He owned a small grocery and always had at least 2 other businesses going, repairing industrial appliances, exporting goods, dabbling in real estate. It was more than enough to raise a family on, and when he died, our family was mostly settled and doing well. He had left nothing that he had wanted to do undone, not even seeing the far side of 100. It was a good death, is what I'm saying. After 103 well-lived years and a long illness in which he lost himself, his death should have been a celebration. I recognize that. But at the time, I fell into a clawing grief that wouldn't let go. In the weeks following the memorial and the funeral and the luncheon, my body swelled. I felt cratered out and ate with a hunger that would not be sated. They looked the same, but it felt like my arms and wrists had turned to wood. I tried to paint, but I had lost my ability to guide a brush. The colors I blended turned muddy and unyielding, and the shapes all got lost in shadow. The grief nagged on as if it had fastened weights around my neck. It wasn't just me either. My whole family clung to his memories, to the small things of him that he had left behind, as if they could keep us afloat and carry us ashore. 3 years after he passed, on one of those startlingly bright autumn mornings, my boyfriend was out of town, and I slipped into my heart vision. I hadn't closed my curtains because I like to slowly wake up with the dawn, something I can't do when Cameron is home. That day, as night changed to dawn, I rose up out of sleep, but instead of waking all the way up, I slipped sideways into a consciousness that is not waking, into my heart vision. The light of dawn was silvery, and as it entered into me, I shifted form and became fluent and absorbent at the same time. Like the physical boundaries of who and how I am became more permeable and interwoven with the world at large. A field of energy throbbed around me. What I saw at first was an amorphous pulsing sac, translucent with a soft rainbow swirling on its surface. It was oblong and curved like a beam. A long cord made of the same shimmery material tethered it. "What is it?" I asked the throbbing energy without speaking. The oblong shape tightened around its contents, a fetus with a cord streaming from the center of its belly. I am pregnant? But in the same moment of asking it, I knew that it wasn't true. Whose soul? When I am this way, with my eyes closed, I can see my physical, factual surroundings, and I can also see the truth of what is there. My grandfather stood outside my bedroom door in the hallway, and he was furious, angrier than I had ever known he was capable of being. He was there in his tan dickies, that same soft-worn leather belt, his plaid flannel work shirt tucked into his pants, white undershirt peeking out. His ball cap stained with sweat that had long ago molded to his head. He needed a shave, and his brown skin folded along his smile line and hung down a little bit below his chin. His face was the same as the last time that I'd seen him. a few liver spots and a scattering of raised black freckles across his face, high, broad cheekbones, and deep-set black eyes that were so dark there was no definition between his iris and pupil. He was a handsome man who still looked good at 103 and dead, and he was furious, a burning anger that threatened to consume me. Now, I don't know much about this thing that I sometimes do, but I'd had to learn to keep myself safe. My granddad pounded on my doorframe in fury. It was frightening, the force of him acting in a way that I had never before known in life. Granddad, you can't come in so angry. My words were weak, I knew, and he couldn't hear me. So here's the thing. There are spirit guides. There are some who work with me when I'm in my heart space. To know them is to know peace and joy and compassion. Their energy streams in and fills my body with spirit. For this alone, you would think that I would return to this place of heart knowing more often. Even in explaining this moment, I crave knowing them. Why don't I go back more often? Well, just exactly because shit like this happens, and then I have to go and do things in the real world that don't make sense. I'm not trained, and I don't particularly want to be. So when my grandfather was pounding fury into my apartment, I called on my guides and let them deal with him. I learned a long time ago it was better to let them work than to try and fight something that was out of my league on my own. Healing is not often neat or pretty or easy. All went quiet, and I sunk deep into my heart space, and the light inside me became bright, and my muscles opened and settled. I lay in perfect alignment, and my inhalations filled me all the way to the base of my pelvis. All the way to the base of my pelvis. I exhaled more slowly and fully than I can ever breathe when I am factually conscious. I was content to lie there for as long as I could, which always passes in a heartbeat anyway. Then my guides came back. When they came, sometimes I see them in the way that seeing the wintry color of light on water is like seeing the sun, but mostly I feel them. When they impart knowledge to me, I understand it in a knowing that is deeper and antecedent to language. For my consciousness to hold on to, it percolates up to language, but it becomes a thinner understanding. In this way, I came to know that my grandfather had not passed on as he was supposed to after death, that he wasn't angry with me, but with himself for not having had the courage to speak up in life for what he needed in death. So I'm going to jump here. He asked her to take, her grandfather asked her to take his soul back to Mexico. And it turns into a journey for her where she has to visit grandmother and get his soul and get to Mexico. And she meets with old family there and tosses his, not his ashes, but dirt from his grave in a long arc over the sea. And then I'm just going to pick up after the morning after that happens. I wake the next morning as night is just barely fading into day. I look at the dark, wondering what it was that had woken me. Something had woken me, I know, but there is no noise in the hotel, just the sound of wind and the waves. I smile, thinking about the events of the day before, and go back to sleep. Only a minute passes before something wakes me again. I feel like I have been shaken awake, but there is no one here. My eyes are still heavy, and I'm not compelled to get up like I am when I have a day to paint. I close my eyes, but someone may as well be playing the radio right next to me. Images of the Malecon and of the lighthouse and the winding path up to it flash through my head. I close my eyes and open them again. Fine, I say out loud, and throw the covers off and dress. As soon as I walk outside, a huge smile breaks across my face, as if I'm meeting someone very dear to me. I am joyous, a word I would have never used to describe myself at any time before this moment. I cross the street and begin to walk towards the lighthouse. The Malecon is flat and wide in town, but soon it turns hilly and curvy as it winds its way along the coast. Occasionally, old stone staircases zigzag down the cliff to a cove or lookout point. I pass men standing waist deep in the ocean, fishing by casting their nets out into the water and then gathering them back into themselves. There are some runners out and walkers of all kind, in groups, couples, and like myself, solo. The morning turns hot and bright, but it doesn't burn off the otherworldly feel to the day. It seems as if some rare silvery light was shining down, making the stones I walked on, the foliage, the birds, the sea, everything around me seem hyper-real. It feels like when I slip into the heart space, but outside of me too, like I'm in some giant shimmery orb. There is an irregularly shapen lot on a hill, overgrown with grasses and set off by a listing plankboard fence that puts me in mind of some of the old lots that were by my grandparents' home in the Mission. They've long been sold off and developed, but I like seeing the familiar here. There's an ornate white restaurant standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean. I pause and look back, tracking the path that I've come along, down past the white restaurant to where the road curves along the hills and cliffs. From this distance, I can see the tri-pronged radio towers in red and white on the hills that define the landscape. It seems as if there is no end to the similarities between here and home. I go on again and walk steadily. I hadn't realized the lighthouse was this far away. When I get to the end of the Malecon, the road splits, one side turning sharply up a steep hill and the other widening out towards the rocky island where the lighthouse stands. Docks reach out into the sea from either side of the road, and I pass several tiny restaurants. Then I'm at the trail. The trail is steep and dusty, but the hill is lush and thick with trees and plants and flowers. Butterflies and bees and insects zip about. The dirt path switchbacks up the hill and becomes rocky. The moon is still high in the sky, and the plants dwarf me on either side of the path. I feel lighter, brighter than I have in years. At the end of the path are 3 wide cement steps and an open gate to the paved area at the top of the hill. The foliage has been mostly cut back, and the sky opens up above and around me, enfolding me within. I go straight to the edge to look back at the length of Mazatlan and then out across the water. An expansive ocean never fails to calm me. It gives me perspective to see it go on and on, meeting the sky in some indiscernible place in the distance. As I look, for a moment, a trick of the light perhaps, the sky and the sea take on the same color, and it seems as if I am looking off into eternity. I walk across the top of the hill and past the light itself, a light bulb 10 feet across, set on top of a low cinder block building. On the other side of the building, poinsettias, still green, grow in used paint buckets that have been mounted to the wall with rusty nails and wire. Past the lighthouse is a lookout point, and I walk out as far as I can and lean up against the railing at the edge of the cliff. The cliff falls 500 feet to the ocean below. It is studded with boulders and thick with hardy plants. I like watching the birds and butterflies move about below me and sigh with contentment. The sun warm on my back, this feeling of being in the company of another. I smile. A dry and callous sensation gently wraps around my hand, and I feel the warmth of a body standing next to me. There is no one there to see, I know, but I turn to look and begin to cry, just as if I were looking directly into the eyes of someone I've known and loved deeply. I look back out into the distance again, wanting to catch that glimpse of eternity, but a movement below me catches my eye. I look down the side of the rocky hill and see an eagle lifting off. She flies up, level to me, and the warmth on my hand and along my body leave with her as she flies away from the lighthouse. She soars out over the sun's reflection on the water into exactly that point where the meeting of sky and sea disappear into the light of the sun. I wait, watching for the moment that she will turn, or drop down toward the ocean, or rise up higher and I can see her once more. I wait and watch, long enough, it feels like, for an egg to hatch or a flower to bloom, and then some, but she doesn't ever reappear. It is as if she had flown straight into the heart of the sun. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Michelle Marie. So, our second featured reading is Norman Zelaya, who is one of the formidable figures of the mission, someone I always love to run into. And one of the things that's very important to mention about him is that he's been working in the public schools as one of the stalwarts, doing the absolutely essential work of being with the young people and forming the next generation as it comes up. So, but he's also an accomplished artist, a short story writer. His first book is Orlando and Other Stories, and he has a book since then called Gente, Folks. Beautiful short stories that give you a real kind of nitty-gritty take of what it is to grow up in the mission back in the day. Norman was there and was an essential component of that story. And he's, again, a poet, a stand-up comedian, stage, screen, and all that. There's probably genres that he's still working on that haven't even developed yet, but we'll see about that. So gives me great pleasure to present Norman Zelaya.
Tommy was a lot like me. Nicoya, mission-born, light-skinned, about the same age, poor, single mom at home. He had a little sister. I had a little sister. We lived 2 buildings apart, but when I visited his place, I saw how we were different. His apartment was always unkempt, toys and clothes and shit covering the floor. His little sister trying to pick up whenever Tommy's friends were over. No beans or rice on the stove or pots and pans piled high in the sink. Tommy, go to the store and get your friends some chips or something. And Tommy grabbed the crinkled bill from his mother's red-tipped hand and was out. Me and 1 or 2 other dudes standing in the middle of the room. How are you boys? Still in school? We were like, it's summertime, senora. That must be nice. Playing all day, running outside. That is nice. Her voice was raspy and she was young and must have been pretty once. She still had her alabaster skin. Her dark eyes were bright, cute freckles on her cheeks, but her tousled hair and that dying voice made her a lot older. The door slammed and Tommy rushed in unceremoniously, the large bag thrust out into our faces. I was never comfortable there, as generous as they tried to be and polite as they were. I felt for Tommy. Somehow, I felt he might be unhappy. He never let on if he was. He liked being with his friends. Always. Yeah, man. We were crazy then, but the craziest shit was jumping off the roof of the pool. That was sick. It was high and shit, right? But you didn't care. You weren't tripping about how high it was or the fact that you had to clear the edge. It was like a little step, remember? And if you didn't push off it right, you could trip and spill and shit. But you didn't care. You just want to be out in the air. Just feel like you were flying for a split second. Free as fuck, man. When you was up there in the air like that, it was like you was as high as the buildings across the street and in the alley. It was like you were gonna clear the fucking roofs and keep on going. Free. It was freedom, bro. That's probably why we didn't give a fuck about jumping off the damn roof. We just wanted to feel free. Tommy didn't remember the things the way I did. I don't think he ever jumped off that roof. I don't ever remember seeing him back up there. Just a wave goodbye and check you guys out as he split for home whenever he shimmied up the pipes to join the big heads on late nights. Tommy wasn't bad. Caught holding little weed, which ain't about shit, except if you're like Tommy and from here and dudes get arrested a lot for a little. Tommy wasn't a bad dude, bro. And it probably wasn't just the weed. It was all kinds of other shits, like maybe you ain't got someone to greet you a good morning. You ain't ever tripped too much about school. Education ain't never did too much to make you trip. You ain't got money. You ain't got good food to eat. You ain't got nice clothes so dudes be clowning you. You ain't got no damn father. You ain't got models except for the fucks clowning you and who never leave the park. You ain't ever had someone tell you you could leave. Ain't ever had anyone let you in on the secret. Ain't ever had a thought about where to go. You ain't ever had someone say, I love you. I love you, homeboy. I love you, Tommy. No one ain't ever told you you're special, young blood. God damn it, you're special. Tommy didn't have much now on that bus. No cigarettes, no job, no stop in sight. But he had Tommy. He had himself. He was the only one with the strength and love to rouse him awake every morning. He had himself to keep company as he counted away the seconds, tick, tick, tick. He loved himself enough to take the time to gel his hair and comb it, to clean himself up as much as he could. Tommy was never a very sharp homeboy, but he was still here. Still had his chin up just in case a familiar face came through, a friend. He pushed forward without no other choice because Tommy had a huge heart. He was full of love, had it in reserves, just waiting, just waiting, just waiting. And Tommy had these stories. He had something to say to whoever was close, just like he did when we were teens and kicking it on the block, flipping cassette tapes on the boombox. He was always jabbering 100 miles a minute about a song, a group, a movie, dinner, a girl, Walkmans, the best Chinese food, gold chains, sunblocks on board. Remember him? Adidas, weed, menthols, the beach, weather's like in San Francisco, the flea market, water slides, weather, the California coast, earthquakes, fucking Niners. Tommy could talk about it all. Hitting a cigarette funny, and all the time dancing to the music, a hot-footed high step, back and forth, side to side. He still had his stories, and for 4 more blocks, me to listen to him. Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here at Bird and Beckett. This is my first time ever in this bookstore. And I'm 50 years old, born and raised in San Francisco, been here all my life. And that's the wonderful thing, about being from here, is I can still walk around these streets and find gems, right? I can still find places. And I mean real places. I don't mean like getting in a line to wait to go to fucking Tartine. Not that bullshit. I'm talking about real places, and hang out with folks. So this is very special. Thank you to my man, Michael Koch. Un aplauso para Michael. Jerry and our friends here at the bookstore for making this happen and keeping it going. I mean, this is a very special place because it exists, right? Like I started going to open mics in 1990, and I could go to a place every night of the week, look at Poetry Flash and see what was going on. And I was busy. Like, it's not that anymore. So having these spaces where people can come and share the literature, the stories, the music is critical. So otro aplauso for Bird and Beckett for making it possible. I like being up here in Glen Park, right? I'm from the Mission. I grew up on 19th Street. And, as a very little boy, we would come up here and go into the canyon, right? I remember like being like 6, 7, 8. We get on the 26 Valencia, which doesn't exist anymore. But it got us up here and then just run into the canyon because we wanted to find Devil's Slide, which is like, it's on Highway 1. But we heard it was in the canyon. It's a dangerous part, right? That was a critical piece. It was dangerous. Like, let's go see it. We're 7 and 8. Let's go find some danger. So we're running.
There are foxes in Glen Park that climb trees.
Sure there are. Even more danger that we were unaware of and running full steam into. So we did that, right? And then a few years later, we used to jump on the J Church and ride it all the way up here to 30th Street and go to Upper Noe. And when I say jump on the J Church, we would hide in the bushes at the top of the hill in Dolores Park. And when the train pulled up, we would jump out and jump onto the back. Where the trains couple, right? That metal thing. It's like, we would jump onto that. Like 7 or 8 of us. My friend Oscar would be the first one because he was the oldest. He was like 12 or 13. I was about 9. And he would jump on and hold on to the windshield wipers. And they were all just kind of jumped on afterwards and just kind of held on to the person in front of you. I was the lad just kind of hugging whoever was there. And we would ride the train like that all the way to 30th Street to go play with the group of kids that we found at Upper Noe. And then we would go there and just play like hide and seek. And we just spent time on the roof of the gym over there and hiding all around the neighborhood. So that was some of the being around here. And then when we were about 11, 12, and it was our first time we could go trick-or-treating by ourselves, right? And we took off because like when I was a kid, my mother would walk us from 19th in Valencia down to Mission, and then we would go to 24th down to Bryant on one side of the block, cross the street, and then do the same route on the other side. And we did that for as long as Mama took us out to trick-or-treat. But then we got old enough, we're like, fuck this, let's get out of here. And we discovered Church Street and Chineri, and holy shit, the trick-or-treating up here was amazing. Like they gave you whole packs of gum, not just a stick of gum, the whole fucking pack. Just spending hours up around here, just up and down stairs, hella stairs. My God, it's stairs. but it was wonderful. And then when we got to high school, and then Glen Park was one of the places where we would have kegs. So we would have kegs. Where's the keg this week? Oh, at the Greens. Oh, down at the Palace. Oh, at the Grove. No, at Glen Park. So way up there, back there behind the rec center, in the entrance to the canyon, and there we are, having kegs, right? What was it, like $1, $2 a cup? The dude didn't know you was an ass. It was $3 a fucking cup. Whatever it was, we were out there partying, and for those you wouldn't know, like Mama didn't know what I was doing, jumping on the train, nor at the keg, right? And now you know. So don't tell Mama, because she'll still ask, what were you doing? And there was one, like the last time I was at a keg up here in Glen Park, there was about 100 kids up there, 100 teenagers, and all of a sudden, like the police showed up, right? And everybody rushed down towards the rec center where the cars were parked, and like generally like towards where the cars were parked, like except for me and a friend who decided to run into the canyon. And up, they just keep running up, and just keep running up. And I remember like feeling like my feet sink into the earth as I was just trying to get away from the police and pulling my feet out and just keep running. And at some point, we hit the ground, and my friend and I, and just waited. And lights flashed, and eventually they were gone. Eventually everyone was gone. It was just the two of us. And, my ride left too. So we walked. I walked. At that time, I was living on Shot 117th, and I walked home. And I get home, and Mama's sitting on the steps, like having a cigarette. I don't know. Maybe she was waiting for me, maybe not. And it wasn't very late. It was like 11:30, 11:45. And she asked me, like where I've been. Oh, just, hanging out at my friend's house. She goes, okay. Like, what happened to your pants? And I was wearing some powder blue jeans, right? And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean my pants? She goes, what's wrong with your pants? And from my knees to my feet, just covered in mud, like dark chocolate mud. I'm like, were you drinking? Yeah, Mama, you got me. I was drinking. But she was cool about it, and, told me, be careful, not to fuck around too much. But, so that's about as much as I know about this neighborhood. So it's wonderful to be here, and be cool. Although Mike was plying me with wine. That's all right. We're all adults now. So, again, and Michelle was really worried about the rain. And somehow people being scared, not going out to the street because it's raining. Right? But you guys are a tough-ass old crowd. You guys love the rain. Gracias a ustedes. Un aplauso para ustedes. For not caring about whether you're wet or not. So this is my new book, Gente Folks, published by Black Freighter Press. My friend Tongo Eisen Martin, who is our poet laureate, co-founded this press and asked me if I had something, and I didn't have anything. I had an idea. I told him, let me sketch some things out. And if you dig it, let's move. And if not, it's all right. And my intention was 40 poems. Because I am a poet, Michael. I still claim that title. I'm proud of that title. I like maestro and I like poeta. So that was my intention. And I got out to 20. And each piece was going to be about a person in the neighborhood. Because as long as I've been writing since I was 15, all I ever wanted to do is write about where I'm from and write about the people that I share that space with. So that's why it's Gente Folks. I'm filling my tank at the Olympic, the cheap gas on South Van Ness. A few others are filling up too. It's a lazy time of day, in between traffic peaks. A man ambles near the station, checks the door of the green public restroom booth. He puts a hand on the meter. It used to take coins. Damn progress. He's middle-aged, maybe early 50s, a white man, lean from being on the street. His forearms are muscular, shiny with sweat, smudged with grease. His hair is longish and thick with oil. He shuffles among the cars. A dude in an old Impala wagon calls out to him, "Hey, do you collect cans?" "Excuse me? Do you collect cans?" He scratches his crown. "Do I have to?" "Here, man, I have some cans for you to sell." The haggard man, face grooved and ruminating, walks over to the open trunk and the dude hands him a plastic garbage bag full and brassy. He takes the bag and walks off down to Chavez. He stops at the corner and surveys the traffic, cars rushing west to St. Luke's Hospital and Twin Peaks in the Pacific, trucks and vans speeding east to the freeway and Evans Street in the produce district. The light changes for left or right turns, depending on whether one needs to make the bridge, awful with gridlock, exhaust in the eyes, or one is having a cheat day, playing hooky and dreaming of the ocean, the Pacific, a forever dream come true. The old man puts the bag down like he's spent, drained. He squints in the daylight, scratches his cheek. He looks up and down the thoroughfare. The light changes. He doesn't move. It's mid-morning and bright. And it's a hot day. It's a fucking hot-ass day. Oh, you're too kind. Saturdays, I bugged everybody to play tackle football at Mission High School. During the week, we played at the playground on the concrete field from the afternoon into the evening. It was all we had, and it was cool. All the homeboys in the barrio came to play. Lots of times we had 11 on both sides, and dudes subbed in the game as the day went on, and the other dudes left. An errand, dinner, homework, smoke some weed, a TV show, pinball. Somebody's sister showed up talking about let's go. A girlfriend came and crossed her arms, leaned against the fence with a cigarette. Another homeboy with a joint, hungry, ran to the store for chips and candy. Atari, comics, hopped on bikes and rode off, or just fucking got bored. It was cool. But I wanted to play for real. I wanted to hit and tackle. I wanted to run that extra length of field like I might keep on going, count down by fives. Games at the playground was like running around in the living room or playing one-on-one in the hallway with my little brother. Mama shouted to stop our sanganadas. ¿Qué hacen? There were 12 of us in a one-bedroom apartment, and I was always looking for a place to play, a space to lay out my Green Army men, a shelf to stack my comics, a cigar box to hide my prized baseball cards and silver rings I found in the street. I forever shared a bed, shook legs off me, and jostled my feet to claim space. I was always squirming to move a few inches further. I was always trying to pull out of arms, break free. And I got fucking sick of ripping up my knees on the concrete, busting old scabs. Most neighborhood fools were satisfied with the playground. They didn't want to walk all the way up to Mission High School. Oh, fuck that. But all I needed to do was convince Hugo. He was cool to me. He listened. All right, little man, run ahead, go deep. And then he rallied all the other fucks. The Mission varsity team played all their games at Kezar Stadium because the school field was only 85 yards long. It wasn't even long enough for 2 end zones. The JV played home games at Mission High, but they had to walk the ball back 25 yards anytime anyone got inside the 20-yard line. It was always a regulation field for us, though. It was dreams, wishes, for real. Sometimes the big heads from the neighborhood gangs played each other on the field. San Fran Mission, 22nd Street Homeboys, Happy Homes Grande, Little Time Mission, Tiny Winos. We would stand on the sidelines, sipping an orange soda and working hard taffy, tossed the ball around and watched. At halftime, the big heads opened coolers with beer and dug into buckets of fried chicken and coleslaw. A girlfriend lit a joint and passed it around, gave her man a charge. Heads smoked weed throughout the game, actually. Music played and dudes bopped, digging it heavy. Halftime for real. The beer and food wasn't for us. Not for all of us. Harold, because he was older, and Hugo, whose brothers knew and ran with all of them, got food. Hugo snuck us some drumsticks. Harold didn't. He was a prick talking about What you gonna give me though, dickhead? When the mood lulled, the big hits started shouting. They ordered us to play the little hits from the other side, not to be pussies and challenge them. Come on, fuckers, play. We were hesitant to take the field. We felt their eyes and worse, heard all this shit talking. It was pressure to be good. They cheered and laughed and goaded us to hurt each other. Come on, little man. You gonna let that chump do that to you? He ain't about shit. He's a bitch. Man, they talking about your mama. Get that bitch, pussies. Chugging beers and spitting and talking all that shit, it got to us. The way to drown it out was to play hard, get mean, fight if we had to. When the biggest were ready to get their game going again, they crushed their empty, shouted, "The fuck off the field, assholes," and we shuffled to the sideline. We took a knee, checked our scrapes as we watched them play. Fools tried for a piece of chicken. Hoped one of the homegirls would defend them if a big head barked to keep their hands out of the fucking cooler. Don't be mean. It's just chicken, you dick. We checked our pockets for gum, change, flicked rubber bands at each other until we got bored and decided to go because it got fucking boring to watch a bunch of high-ass cholos and Chuck Taylors and tube socks scrum and yank at each other. After a while, we were like, fuck it, and left for home. But we loved tackle football, and whenever the field was free and we got enough dudes together, we showed up super early to play. I need to acknowledge a few of the folks in the audience. One, otro aplauso for Michelle. Michelle Marie Robles Wallace. Michelle, man, it's decades ago, years ago. We met and she would invite me. She had this reading on 24th near Folsom called Kaleidoscope. And she invited me to come out and share. And during that time, I have to say it's critical that happened because it was a time where I was already teaching full time. I've been a special education teacher for more than 25 years. And Michelle talked about, like having kids and dulling, your creative juices. You're goddamn right. Yes, it does. Because they're kids. They need all your time. Right? And as a teacher, they're not my kids. So if something goes wrong, that's a lot of trouble. But it does. It takes up a lot of your time, and it's great. And it's wonderful. But it's tough to keep going at the end of the day and just 30 minutes and scribble in this notebook. And I wasn't writing a lot at all during that period. I mean, there was 15 years went by that I might have been written literally 1 or 2 days a year, So when someone like Michelle came along and said, "Hey, come out and read," that was a lifesaver, just to keep me going. And then to meet people like Jessica Martinez, who's part of her Mills College crew, all those crazy heads out there, man, they put out some artists, some writers out, from there. And to meet her, and important to have people to talk to about writing. Because as much as I love my homeboys, they weren't talking about Hemingway or Raymond Carver very much, or, it just wasn't in the conversation when you're hanging out on the block, and pounding 40s. So important to have people who I can talk to. I have to recognize also Rosie Reyes, who is the president of the Glen Park chapter of the Zelaya fan club. Un aplauso, Rosie Reyes. Who spent time, on the radio and invite me to interview and has promoted my work and what I do for a long time. So I'm thankful for that she came out and showed up. Also spearheading the new MACA movement, am I correct? I saw that, if you guys aren't familiar with the MAQA, which is the Make America Queer Again movement, Rosie Reyes and a bunch of other queer Latinx. Yes, un aplauso! I'm proud of them, right? Because I also like to think about, my queer folks in the neighborhood, thinking about Jaime Cortez and Kathy Arellano, and Bero Mahano, who like those two are from my neighborhood, man, and doing great things in writing and producing films and books and stuff. Like I never thought about that. I was like hanging for dear life on that J Church coming up. Never thought about being an artist like that. And here they are, right? And full head of steam with the new Maca movement, but artists, but like people that were very influential in my life as a writer. So I have to also recognize them and you folks in the audience. And I'm always about promoting my gente. You know, Katika Martinez, big wig at San Francisco State University, right? Professor, and now like the dean of the college? My giza. Un aplauso for Katika Martinez. Wielding that power over people, influencing minds. That's incredible. I see you trying to hide Carlos, but that's all right. Carlos, who's also teaching at UC Santa Cruz. Come on, un aplauso, Dr. Carlos. So, yeah, it's been wonderful to be a part of this circle of people. So thank you for coming out. I'll do one last bit, and in support of my folks in the Maca movement, I'll read this last bit, and this is about a person named Ursula. And I have to say, wait, Kevin? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Turgeson, class of 1991, Sacred Cathedral High School. I played football with Kevin in high school. Kevin's also a public school teacher in middle school. Very important work. I couldn't do it. Like, hell no. So God bless you for doing middle school. But Kevin and I played high school football. And there was, during practice, like just one time. He's a big, strapping Adonis-like man at 17. Like who could be that big and muscly at 17? Like without even trying. Like he just showed up and I was, much like I am now. Essentially. I was all of like 5 feet and 117 pounds was my playing weight. And Kevin was clearly well over 200 pounds. Like that was my senior year. And of course, you go to college, I ballooned up to 126 pounds. And there was one, you didn't see it coming, but you were going after the ball. I just waited for you. And it was cheap. Like you were looking at all, and I just cling right underneath your jaw. And you kind of went, ha, 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 ha. Like it was nothing. Like you didn't feel it. Oh, Norman, silly you. Thank you for coming out, Kevin Turgeson, SF native. Right on, bro. I lean my elbows on the folding table to read news on my phone. A dryer door slams across from me. I don't look up. Then coins click as they fall into a slot. Esto es suyo. The hermosa woman leans into my field of vision, curls her white-tipped fingers at me. I left my detergent on top of a machine. I move it in my bag and supplies to the table, scoot to the end. Gracias. I smile meekly. An older man, thin and dressed to handle style with a waxed and curled, way too black mustache, is chatting up La Hermosa, hovering over her. He's explaining songs that he's written. He's been writing lyrics since he was an adolescent. He kept them in a book that he rolled up and hid under his mattress, ¿verdad? He was embarrassed to let anyone know that he wrote, that he had such ambitions, tú sabes. He pored over the pages in moments when his father and brothers were out in the fields, heads in a tractor, busy with a thresher, and he's stolen away to get a drink of water, use the bathroom, whatever his excuse got him back to the house where he could scribble even for a few moments. His soul was in those pages, thoughts he couldn't share with anyone. Ay, qué triste, she says. Qué lástima. What a pity. He must have been so alone holding all those thoughts in, she says, as she sorts closed. Esto es suyo. Perdón. I don't realize she's talking to me. Yoo-hoo! Yoo-hoo! La Hermosa shakes a blue basket at me. I gesture no. Yoo-hoo is a funny, I think. Who says that anymore? The middle-aged Tejano leans in. She bumps him as she opens doors, loads clothes, pours detergent, brushes him out of the way like he's nothing. He's on her hip, lightly steps around her, talks about all the years those songs spent tucked away, unread, unsung, unheard, waiting for the person meant for that unrequited love. One day, he is going to meet her, that special woman. Maybe she's the one he's been looking for. He pulls a black bandana from his shirt pocket and he sings to her, a bolero, and she wants no part of it. Ay, no, por favor. Ay, gente. Not in front of people. She caps a bottle of bleach and walks away. He follows her, explains the song. He wrote it for a girl he knew in his rancho. She always wore a pretty yellow dress, and he saw her pass on the road each day as she went to the mill, accompanied by her sister. He smiled at her, but she never smiled back. He said hello, but they never spoke until one day she looked at him and he understood. He cleaned up that afternoon when the workday was done and went to her house with a handful of posies. Buenas tardes, me llamo José Rogelio Ruiz y Picasso. And that was all he was allowed to say before the father told him to never return. He was never going to be welcome there. Young José Rogelio didn't understand until one day he learned the story about the feud between his father and the girl's father. They could never meet. Por favor, Romeo y Julieta Ruiz y Picasso, I know that old story. It's been done before. La Hermosa spins away, drums the table with her shiny fingernails. Her very big nalgas are propped up in his face. Nothing flirty or teasing. It's more like, talk to the ass, no me jodas, bo. Don Jose Rogelio holds the bandana in both hands. Maybe she prefers to hear a song without exposition. And he sings, serenades her in the middle of the laundromat. She doesn't sit still for it. She busies herself between machines and dryers and finally turns to her friend who's been listening all this time from the bench, scrolling and bouncing his knee. Ayúdame, Romel. Help me. He covers his mouth to hide his smirk. Jefe, the truth is that you can't appreciate the song in here, Don. The acoustics are dreadful, and he's afraid that Don is wasting such a beautiful song in those dismal conditions. The humming is drowning him out. Romel holds a finger in the air, pauses to listen. Perhaps there's a better time and place. Don Jose Rogelio agrees. Romel's correct that a bolero deserves a place with adequate decor and mood. So he'll content La Hermosa with a corrido instead. He taps his foot and slaps his thigh, and she throws her hands up. Ay, por Dios, no! And flees. She sits on the bench with Romel, but quickly moves to the vending machine and acts like she wants something. Runs a finger up and down the glass, wondering out loud about a candy bar or chips or cookies. Romel, ¿qué quieres? ¿Una coca? We can share it if you want. Don Jose Rogelio Ruiz y Picasso keeps on her heels, a hand to his chest and lightly touches her shoulder. La Hermosa recoils. Ay, muchas gracias. Ya basta. Gracias, pero no gracias. She storms away and stands in front of a washer. She crosses her arms, cocks her telenovela hips as clothes turn in the glass. Hat in hand, the Tejano asks her name, Ursula. He introduces himself formally and invites her out. He wants to take her to dinner later. Gracias, but she's busy. Waves a hand like, with all this. Tomorrow night then. I know, she's busy too. This week isn't a good week for encuentros. He trails her as she pushes a cart to a folding table. The Tejano persists. At least allow him to sing her one more song. Ursula reminds him of a classic Jose Alfredo Jimenez song, and he sings the first bars into her ear, but she stops him short. Oh my God, por favor. Jose Alfredo Jimenez, qué aburrido. How boring. No, gracias, ya me cansé. Ursula shakes her arms exasperated. Well, then he'll be prepared next time he sees her. Don Jose Rogelio will return soon. Sí, como no. We'll be waiting for you. Que le vaya bien. Don Jose Rogelio bows and backs out. He gives a final wave with his hat through the window and disappears. Ursula glances at me. I fold my underwear carefully, make neat stacks of 5. Then I put socks into pairs. I make a game out of it like concentration. Ursula dumps clothes on the table and begins to sort jeans from tops, from leggings, from sweats. Esta calceta es suya. She shows me the sock. It's covered in animals. No, I smile, shy. Porque I saw it close to your things. I thought it must be yours. I raised my eyebrows. No. I fold my pants. People leave their things everywhere. Que barbaridad. I keep folding, carefully line up the creases on my pants. Ursula snaps a pair of jeans, hangs them over the cart. She snaps a few more pairs. I think I know you. I mouth. No sé. She taps her lip thoughtful. Ursula holds up a pair of jeans, a small pair. Small. She folds them quickly and moves on. I don't offer anything and the conversation dies. I know who Ursula is. She's the hippie hermosa tranny that lives in the building next to mine. We come and go like folks on mission do. We know each other, but we don't. We become part of the daily circulation, the rhythms of the barrio, its faces, single-minded in the morning, consternated and anguished to make it home in the evening. I've seen her many times. She breezes by in pastel scrubs, yellow, pink, blue, green, and a simple leather pocketbook. No makeup, just light powder. Days off, she walks a tiny dog while she eats ice cream or an elote. Ursula's steps are abrupt like her pet, but she doesn't hurry, takes her time to eat, think. She must see me in the neighborhood too. Thank you all very much for being here tonight.
Zelaya, thank you so much. We're going to take a 5-8 minute break, something like that. And then I think anybody who hasn't signed up who would like to read, please do so. And Jerry will be presiding over the open reading session in 5-8 minutes, something like that. All right, thanks so much.
Which is it, 5 or 8 minutes? What's that? We said it would be 5 or 8 minutes. So which is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Everyone I came with left. But they were with a small child, but I'm gonna stay. It was really cute. I was reading it and I think that's my mama.
Oh, right. I heard that too. That was very cool. She was
All
great.
right, we're about to get underway for the open mic portion of the reading, which Jerry will be presiding over. Should I read a poem? to start?
Undermining.
Undermining. He'll be presiding under. Under or over. We'll see. So, should I just go ahead and read a poem?
Revolt. Yeah, I got the list.
You want to say something before we read?
Before you read? Oh, okay.
You don't have to. I can say it.
Okay. So here we are,
So if you're chatting, please.
the last of the Mohicans. Yes. Gee, thanks for hanging out. I've known Michael Koch here. He's probably one of the oldest friends I have here in San Francisco. We met back in there was a rent strike you had going with Max Schwartz. A rent strike, yeah. Back in Noe Valley. It's like, But so I've been following Michael's poetry all these years, and it just keeps getting more and more improbable, almost. It's like he has a way with language that it's like it's just from an inner music that comes out of him or something. I don't understand it, but it's like to see someone's progress over so many years is really something, and how they, any poet sticks to his guns, right? That's what it's all about. So, anyway, all right, Michael Koch.
Thank you. Just a couple of brief things to kick off this segment of the evening. This is called Dizzy. I love wine described as brooding and dense, children quick as kites, women like barrels of brandy. I love hats, but malheureusement, they mess up my hair. I love cats, but only 10% of them, and dogs unconditionally, except 89% of small dogs and half of big dogs. I love the languages I butcher like a payaso, the word buckwheat, extended ceasefires, diplomatic overtures, the vertigo of detours that complement the cheap red wine of my proletarian imagination. When everyone mourns, laugh, and get dizzy. When all are jubilant, it is time to talk of death. Thanks, and I'm going to conclude with this brief one. It's called The Market's Invisible Hand. I watched Our Lady of the Silk Purse saute the sow's ear on the cooking channel. Learn accounting at home, said the ad. Enjoy abundant hair and disturbing beauty. Make a perfect cup of coffee while drawing blood. As for that eternal erection, just send $49.99 to Dr. Jesus. Yeah.
Good. So, see? You see? Okay. I'm going to read two poems, and I don't know, it's hard to think whether I'm grieving or celebrating, but my mom died last month. She was 97. Yeah, so, and anyway, so I guess I'll read a poem I wrote for her on her 80th birthday. She was 97 when she died. I wrote this on her 80th birthday. My mom, my star. When I think about my life so sweet, when a flower catches my attention by the garden gate, or the scent of jasmine surprises me as the moon is rising late, or especially when I'm with a friend having fun and going out to eat, I often marvel at my fate, as if a fairy tale from childhood's book upon my heart had put a spell, and I was singled out by fortune or by the wishing well for all that is wonderful in life, and that every dream comes true. And I stop and I consider that it's all because of you, who taught me how to live, how to love, and how to receive it too. Like a tree whose roots go deep, and upon its bough it puts the fruit of everything that men aspire to. My happiness, my self-esteem, my sense of home and belonging to, my deep respect for everything that's beautiful and true. These all stem lovingly from you. You who taught me by your own example how even the strongest tree must bend and not be broken by the wind of chance and circumstance into which we human beings are thrown. Nor be a bird that forsakes its nest, trying to fly unto the sun, only to be taken in the hunter's net. But rather through courage, devotion, and sacrifice, we can grow beyond the strife and turmoil of this world to survive, as you did, with serenity, grace, and wisdom, a legacy that will shine forever in my memory. So as I make my way in life, reflecting from day to day, to find what's true, I think of you, and then I find my way. That guiding star that shines above shows we need not look afar for love. And this I cherish and hold most dear, knowing I shall always be your child and keep you forever in my heart, glowing there, even in the dark. And if there is any honor due, if to any is owed my gratitude, it's to you I make this toast. Here's to you, Mom, you're the most. And now I have my poem for Eric here, The Beauty of the Bird and Beckett bookstore. For Eric. And not just to sell books, though we need books more than ever, something real we can hold on to in this digital apocalypse, but also to create community connection and civic spirit and rainbow-colored pride. And to play a part in a creative community is its own reward, its own economy, its own human destiny. The miracle is you don't need a jillion people to keep it cooking. A small, intimate audience will do. And jazz, real jazz, the word itself, the voice of the underground, has always meant freedom and springs from the source, even from beyond this earthly gig where all musicians go to play eternally. And there's no venue like no venue. There's no venue I know like Bird and Beckett. From bebop, doo-wop to hip-hop, a spot that will still shine in the time of trouble. Thank heaven for bookstores everywhere, sacred temples of free speech, of universal learning and teaching, the real university, centers of every subject of interest on earth, fiction or nonfiction, a haven for wisdom and culture, both ancient and present, sanctuary of historical knowledge and collective memory, the real the real journalism, the real news, nourishing and seeding the arts and sciences for the reading public, refuge for humanity, tolerance and civil liberty, truth and justice, transcending all party politics or class, race or gender identity, rich or poor, and always with an open door policy for whoever walks through the door, for globe-hopping strangers and wandering scholars, for poetry, music, and social communion, fueling the imagination of the people's dreams, a literature of life and of love for sale. But it takes showing up every day in the flesh, rain or shine, and manning the counter with a counterculture, yet conservative approach to commerce, one-on-one with the customer, with the joy, humor, and vision that draws people together from all walks of life, from every tradition, in solidarity and hope, to exchange new ideas and keep the conversation going. And remember, when the mob starts burning books, next they'll burn people, like they did when they burned the library at Alexandria. But what is written in the very act of writing itself cannot be forgotten. It's called history. If books be the treasure of our heritage and the record of our humanity, I say, write on. Thank you. So we have Jojo. Joe Nareski.
Wonderful to be here and to listen to the poets. This one I wrote 3 days ago. It's called Stirring and Sharing. The rain licked the streets clean, pelted pedestrians, upended cars, brought destruction in its wake, and with more on the way for days on end, kept him indoors for too long, save for the sunny Saturday on New Year's Day when he walked at Ocean Beach with Natalie, the painter, surrounded by walkers, waves crashing on the shore, birds skimming the surface of the white water, dogs prancing and dancing while they fired words in the air, stopped in their tracks to converse, and then, moving on, turned around and wandered back to his pad for tea, delicious chai tea, adding cream and honey to cups, stirring memories and sharing stories. And this one is from yesterday, Brave Travelers. Brave of you to brave the storm, he texted soon after she texted him to say she would soon step out into the wet and the wild, as Gerard Manley Hopkins would have called it. You went out to fetch the mail, and probably he thought because she loved storm, thunder, lightning, high winds, high surf. He could hear it as soon as he wrote the words on his screen, happy he could text, and happy he had a laptop and could sit comfortably indoors and communicate quickly from the city where he lived to the country where she lived, creating a bridge through the storm with traffic moving in both directions, headlights on, windshield wipers wiping, brave travelers braving the storm. And this one I wrote on the 10th of November last year for my nephew Ismael, who died at 33. You arrived in the world right on time and departed from the world much too soon, leaving a gaping hole in the city where you roamed, where you made your home from Ocean Beach to Hunter's Point and all the points in between, your ghost haunting the space where I live and where you once communed with the soul of the universe. Downstairs from your father and mother, downwind from your homies, who also arrived right on time and departed far too soon, leaving a gaping hole in the city. And so we honor your memory today and send smoke signals and bushels of our love to all the souls who've gone before us. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Brett Benson.
Norman, that was great stuff. I teach high school, so right there with you. Yeah. Yeah. First one's untitled. I know life made you forget who you are. I see the poison that seeped into your bones like a plague. And now you hope, you long, you silently cry and pray for a return to who you were once in the past so long ago. I cannot reverse time, dear one. We are who we have become, as the fates will show us our story. Yea, you see your power every now and again, through glimpses to the vast horizon line. You sense who you were before the darkness overtook everything. Remember your worth, my friend. The eternal you beyond time and death. Do not be afraid of the new you. You are as you are. Know it, feel it, sense it, breathe it. You are who you are. Come back to that person, that everlasting spirit, that brave, valiant one. And then the second one is called The Resurrection of Prometheus's Torch, a Perennial Dialogue in Modern Times. I thought I was fancy when I was making this title, apparently. Might have been under some influence of something. Just fancy. Downward ascent from the mountaintops, rushing with great speed, as though a sacred item had been taken from its sublime altar, a perennial torch, the light of human consciousness in hand, he runs with a wild ferocity in his eyes, a knowing of essential belief, what is at stake if his red flower is made extinguished. Humanity had lost its way, as if it said and screamed, darkness near every corner, filling more hearts every day by day. For the being had grown cold and brutish, a savagery forming, and the dogmatic droves, refusals to acknowledge basic equal life existing in one another, ending in mutually assured destruction. The neighbor did not worship and obey my God, my doctrine, the right way of living. Thus I closed all myself off and fortified to the rest. Thus I am superior. Thus the universe grants me permission to destroy anything opposed to my very sense of being. What madness, what lunacy, a sickness in need of a sustained cure, every mind claiming the right to return to bestial breath and vibrations, when paradise is based on the contradiction of allegiance to a deity and condemnation of the other, who possesses a varied ultimate reality, which is ever present. The form currently has limitations in all of its flawed features. Blast trumpets and horns for generational warfare, binary minds, an impenetrable state of waves to bypass. Behold, he, the descendant of Prometheus, great courage in forehand, foresaw the crisis and thus ran till the fire from his talesman spread to his feet. A flaming meteor headed to the collision with the ape-like chest beats of those souls whose unison with past dogma would not easily be broken or even altered in the slightest measure of changing wavelengths. Though they may not be evil incarnate, the horror show of willingness to embrace ideology to justify the dehumanization of others in the false God claim of self-preservation was before, is now, and shall always be evil in its most malevolent creation. A fury unbound, a speed of the ultimate utmost urgency, light his feet on fire, yet clawing past the formidable terrain, time ticked with the loudest of strikes, as if fate gave one and only one hope to make the shift a successful revelation. He is not tired, he keeps on moving, because damn it, humanity still has one hope. And it isn't just him, it's you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett and Jane Radish. They're clapping, Jane.
I know. Be careful getting up on the stage. Thank you. Here's one rather new poem. The land is talking. Is it the land that's talking, speaking from the earth? Or are these sounds just on the television? Or is it the room? There are sounds that almost aren't sounds, like they might just come from my ear, especially late at night. Now all is soundless except for the cat nibbling her dry food from her metal dish in the kitchen. When all the sounds are off, the noise is still there. Thank you. I come home, pour a glass of wine, and watch television all night. In the early days, I drew and painted all the time, fully aware that the more I drew and painted, the better I would get, all through college and 10 years after. But suddenly there was nothing to sustain me. In the 60s, a poetry phase, going to reading after reading, writing reams of poetry, some of which got published. I had a photography phase because I loved what I saw in the world. One phase after another, now this, a nothing phase. What's after nothing? Can someone tell me? What's after nothing? And one old poem, and backstory is I was one of 5 children, so. My mother. We had another scare with my mother this week. So I called Saturday morning and she was baking a lemon pie. She said, I bought 5 lemons and it was too many. 5 lemons? 5 children? Is she speaking in poetic terms or is she just talking about groceries? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And Alan Harris. Good clapping, Alan.
I thought the building was settling. I'm a server in a seafood restaurant. I have a guest who tells me that he wants to order one of the non-seafood items on our menu, a steak. And he explains to me that the reason he is ordering a steak and not a seafood item is because he is deathly allergic to seafood, and therefore his steak must be prepared in such a way as to not come in contact with anything that has also come in contact with seafood. It must be cooked on a surface on which no seafood has ever been cooked. None of the utensils used in the cooking of the steak must have ever been used to cook seafood. The plate on which the steak is being served must have never been used to serve seafood. That his allergy to seafood is so severe that if his steak comes in contact with anything that has ever at any time in the history of the world also come in contact with seafood, no matter how many times that thing has been washed, he could die. Now, have I mentioned that I'm a server? What used to be known as a waiter before political correctness demanded that the terms waiter and waitress be replaced by the non-gender specific term server, that I'm a server of food and not a medical professional, not a doctor, not a nurse, not a paramedic, that I am merely someone who serves food to people, and yet despite my lowly station in life, this man feels that it is entirely appropriate for him to put his life into my hands, to place on my shoulders the burden of keeping him alive, to be the only thing standing between him and almost certain death by seafood in a seafood restaurant. Maybe, I think, he doesn't realize that he's in a seafood restaurant. Maybe the fact that almost every item on the menu is some sort of seafood doesn't make it apparent enough to him that he is, in fact, sitting in a seafood restaurant. Maybe the decor, which includes life preservers, life jackets, fishing nets, and even fish mounted on the walls, as well as paintings of fishermen at sea actually fishing, along with fish tanks and lobster tanks and an oyster bar and a sushi bar. Maybe none of these things is enough to alert this man to the fact that he is, in fact, sitting in a seafood restaurant, the one place that a person like him, someone afflicted with an allergy to seafood so severe that just taking a photo of him with a camera that has a fish eye lens on it could kill him, should never go into. I mean, does he have some sort of death wish? What if he does? What if he knows very well that he's in a seafood restaurant and he's given me this impossible mission because he wants me to fail at it? If so, what the fuck? I mean, if you want to kill yourself, why drag me into it? Take an overdose of sleeping pills or jump off the Golden Gate Bridge like a normal person. Don't hatch an elaborate plot that hinges on the failure of some poor, pathetic food server to carry out an unrealizable task. Waiting tables is stressful enough without a body count to contend with. Finally, I have to ask, excuse me, sir, but if you're so perilously allergic to seafood, why would you even risk walking into a seafood restaurant, let alone ordering food in one? He points at the two people sitting at the table with him. My friends wanted seafood. Oh, your friends wanted seafood. Well, may I suggest that if these people were really your friends, they would be willing to forego seafood for one night so that you could have a fighting chance of living through the meal? You'd think that if they were really your friends, they wouldn't want you to risk your life just because they're in the mood for crab cakes. I don't actually say this, I just think it. What I actually say is, there's no way that I can guarantee your safety, sir. It's then that he asks to speak to the manager, who thankfully assigns the table to another server, as he feels that my relationship with this particular guest has deteriorated due to my excessive concern for his well-being. With as much condescension as he can muster, the manager suggests to me that maybe food server isn't the right profession for me, since I obviously can't handle the pressures that come with the job. I suggest to him that maybe someone working for tips shouldn't be put in the position of having to safeguard someone else's entire existence. The next day, I apply for a job with the post office. Because the post office provides a valuable service, has room for advancement, is the largest employer of union workers in the country, and as far as I know, no one is allergic to the mail. As far as I know. Thank you.
Show him a moment of silence. That was great, Alan. That was fantastic. Okay, David, I can't read your last name. H something. Hanson? No. I'm sorry. Hutchins. I'm sorry. Okay. David Hutchinson.
Thanks, everybody. You know, I was going to read 3 poems tonight, but in retrospect, I think I'll just leave the first one flying around. So these are recent, this poem and what I'll read next. And this one was difficult to write until I ran across the shortest letter ever written. And reminded me of a fellow traveler, however indifferent from me. It's called Armistice. West to east, spinning barrels underneath, woolen knit and skirts or kilts, wearing peril, wine and guns off-leashed, to miss cover, of introductions made in sleep. These days of clubs and feats, delving depths of no return from conflagrations so abysmal, no luminaries flashing metals. Up the ladders, slid down shelves asunder so the tomes of knowledge rain on skinless heads called pelts. Shedding ever sadder leaves swimming, thirsty falling in the air, gasping over density in the breeze. Difficulties adopted as much as joined by reasons none can welcome, in some mockery of choice. The fathoms linger still, understood as gone but not released, and so haunting every moment, hearing fragments blown asunder. These days of talks and meets, knowing glances gaunt and stern to broker some temporal lapse. The tragedies sadly living still. No heroes in their tombs of metal, and no graves can keep them under the watchful knowing unsurrendered to false peace that would forget in the search for quiet but irreverent. There must be these as remembered even as we draw the lines of eventual lasting peace, and yet not to be rendered future is never known in the bitterness that steers away from reconstruction with abandoned justice mapped. So the better days ahead, paired with cold nights still in our heads, can befall us as a glory tribute to the sacrifice brought by living, known in recognition by. Their own of precognition seen as their noun collapsed with meaning as of all they navigate beyond. That which buries dreams even while churning them in the living, to go on in the quiet dignity of a restless peace, remembered always as a lost who gave conclusion. So we hold to chest the thought in the evolutions of unfolding change. Executions are the slaves to heart still. And I'll read some of this short story I just began writing last year that isn't finished. It's called Underwater. To have alleged such would have required its own suspension, that he hung there for this reason to be seen by them. So the failure to imagine but not say regalia to his friends in terms of the parachute all caught in the wires, not the wind, would require its own construction of belief. Much later on, then, he retreated back to that swimming pool and a tea ritual and friction, but the soft sort. Of air and still drowning, he often reflected as he carried on with his days, each one passing as a breeze, enveloping him in a sort of perverse freedom. He could go anywhere and yet still feel trapped by the ability. So often he simply sat on a bench and struck up yet another conversation, either with himself or the endless stream of strangers moving or then sitting all around him as visible ghosts, or gusts, he thought. These two today he contemplated telling about the empty field of dirt and landing that would never happen until the rescue crew arrived, appeared amenable to such an anecdote. But the story eluded him to be replaced by one still not current but usurpatory at the moment. The suspension retreated to the background, a field dressing in the battle for his memories. Both of you together remind me of an episode from my youth that, let's just say, still bothers me as unfinished, said Blythe. The two turned their heads toward him near simultaneously, but in different arcs, each their own style within unison. That sounds hard, replied the woman, sitting far from him, beyond her gentleman partner, sitting on the 3 green painted slats of hardwood showing wear around the screws. Only momentarily, honestly, said Blythe, as I was not present to hear the explosions or feel their burn. He left off for a second and thought of that. Have you ever tied 2 doorknobs together with string and a firecracker? He said as an ask. Not until I opened this door, sir. Not that I have opened an explosion, replied the partner in defense of the bench. Have you not? Replied Blythe. Depends on the door, offered Blythe, by way of further introduction. The man between them replied, given choice, I'd say I've not either. It's funny that when young, when we are infatuated with a crush, we often are at our most cruel. The very words we use, even for those we desire, in some fashion, Then again, we might often do this as adults as well. We left the sprinklers on, then left, and they were on vacation. The burns and swamp, I only imagine, may have happened. The family vanished, sadly. Would this be an admission of guilt then? Asked the woman from afar. I can't very well be guilty of a result from my actions that I am still unaware of, can I? Asked Blythe. No doubt, said the in-between partner as the light rain began to fall. They were under a tree, so perceived it without feeling, the droplets having not wended their way from the leaves down the branches to be launched by gravity into the air. They hustled upon the notion, rising only in that they got up from the bench to part ways, so in some sense this had happened in the world. Blythe had decided to walk in the park even with the rain and lack of appropriate attire, perhaps as some form of asking forgiveness now that he thought of the new girl in school had again approached him. He decided he was even less kind earlier to a different new girl he was not fond of, as she carried with her from some former life a distinct odor. He was not the only student to mock her, but inventive in ways to do so. He felt he might never outlive such horrors, rarely asking himself if ever that young girl still towed any remnants of the mean and persistent treatment behind her into adulthood. How would such a load manifest in the physical world as an odorous cloud hovering at her rear even while she had taken the hints and grown into better hygiene as she aged? People might comment on such a cloud, he thought. That's sure some foul gas you just walked through. She might reply in return to divert attention. Yes, you should have seen the man who dispatched such a rude emission as that. In this she could not be found guilty as she not pointed to an individual, just an ambiguous half of the species. Stymied at this understanding, he simply walked and soaked in the rain, his clothes draped around him as a tight, heavy cloak, but with sleeves and pants. His shoes became sponges and made each step an audible sound he had always detested, the word to describe, so he refrained even in his thoughts, all he had in the moment. Then not far away he noticed a fungus, and trudged on over to give it his attention. Then he thought of the man hanging, but failed to put the two together until later. Thanks.
That's a short story?
Well, it will be. Not yet.
Okay, Jessica Martinez, please.
Hello, I'm Jessica Martinez. So I've been writing zines that are about how to get over a breakup using quotes from Wayne's World, the 1990s comedy. So this one is called Get Over It, Go Out with Somebody Else. Garth said it best, the complete guide to breaking up. And a breakup, it doesn't just have to be a romantic breakup. It could be like breaking up with a friend or breaking up with a habit or something like that. So one of the advice I give to get over a breakup is to travel. Your situation will dictate what kind of travel you can do. And while climbing Machu Picchu would take anyone's mind off their ex, sometimes you don't have to go that far to go somewhere new. The summer going into 8th grade, I had just such an experience. I'd gone to the same small Christian school since kindergarten, and with the onset of puberty, my classmates and I had turned on each other. There was no physical quality that could escape our ridicule. Too skinny, too fat, too dark, too light, glasses too nerdy, glasses not nerdy enough. And in the midst of my shit-talking and 90s attempt to have the perfect shade of dark lip liner and size of curled bangs, my parents enrolled me in day camp at the YMCA. Even though I wasn't going through a romantic breakup, in a way I was breaking up with childhood, which is kind of the saddest breakup of all. And I was spending all my energy trying to look cool for people who were going out of their way to make fun of me. I needed something new. So as I posed on the bleachers in the best wannabe gangster pose during summer camp orientation, these two sisters caught my attention. They seemed to have the chola look down better, so I prepared for a battle of insults. But instead, they waved at me. "You look like our friend Melanie," they said. "What's your name?" "Jessica." That's our cousin's name. Can we call you Chekala? That's what her baby brother calls her because he can't pronounce her name. It was no La Tough Girl, but the affectionate nickname created an instant bond between us. And we spent the summer laughing and hanging out while the camp organized field trips to theme parks, the beach, the movies, the mall. We didn't keep in touch after that summer, but I entered 8th grade with a whole new attitude about how to treat others. I decided not to make fun of anyone anymore, and as a result, nobody made fun of me. It was my best year since puberty had hit, and I discovered I was much happier. A few years ago, I met a woman my age who did travel to Peru that summer. She was blessed by a shaman in a sacred ceremony that prepared her journey into adolescence. And even though I was slightly jealous, I also felt that I wouldn't trade my experience for anyone else's. Because more relevant to me at the time was meeting Annabelle and Zoila, the nice cholas from Compton who taught me that you didn't have to be mean to be cool. Thank you.
And Claire.
Hey, you know, it's nice to see these proud teachers here. I taught in South City for 30 years, but I did it so half-assed. I've never considered myself a teacher. So I salute you, you guys who are proud. That's great. Okay, so people tell me all the time that I focus on the darkness and, you know, the negative side of things, the pain. And so I thought, okay, I'll do something else. And this is called I'm So Fucking Happy. I'm so fucking happy. I wake up on my bed instead of the floor, and I don't have dry heaves. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. There's no dog piss on the carpet and no cat vomit on the counter. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. I have boxers that are only twice worn and my shirt has just 3 stains. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. I don't succumb to road rage on the way to work and I'm only 2 hours late. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. No one accuses me of sexual harassment and the boss only yells at me once. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. I remember to eat a meal and I don't rear anyone in the drive-thru. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. The bartender doesn't cut me off and I don't pick any fights. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. I don't hit any cars in the parking lot and I don't get a DUI on the way home. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. I don't drive onto my lawn and there's no eviction notice on my front door. I'm so fucking happy. I'm so fucking happy. I don't break the bong and there's still some Oxycontin in the sock drawer. I'm so fucking happy. And as the dog shits on the rug and the cat pisses on my forehead, I curl up on the bottom shelf of the bookcase and think with contentment, I'm so fucking happy. Thank you.
And the next quote is Rosie.
President of the Mission Terrace chapter. Enormous Slab fan club.
Thanks for clarifying. Okay, this is for Jessica Martinez, who said, "Aren't you going to read?" So, and this first one's in Spanish. Also, this is my first time ever reading, so ever. Thank you. So this is poem number 3 in Pacifica, California. ¿Cómo extrañar un ser que no conoces? No una media naranja, un polo que me orienta a la felicidad. Abre mi corazón sin lazos o compromisos, solo besos existenciales para respirar. Te digo, salió el sol y estuvo bien alta la marea, allá abajo, solo yo y los pescadores. Maybe somebody understood it. Freedom is floating above the clouds, but still tethered to the butterfly dancing on a poppy. Freedom is feeling weightless, but still feel the ancestors at the small of my back when I feel my freedom is at risk. And this last little piece, which is very timely, actually, as I celebrate a big kind of anniversary on Saturday. Many years ago, the curandera brushed the leaves over me. Tienes que dejarlos. You have to let them go. I had prayed for them to haunt me, to show themselves to me. I was holding, hoping. I am still learning to release. A long, slow exhale. Thanks.
Oh, thanks a lot, folks. Thanks for coming out to the Burton Beckett. We do this. And thank you, Michael Koch, for being at the post. And we do this the first Thursday of the month at 7:00. So please come back and read us your stories. Tell your friends to come and read their stories, and so on and so forth. So thank you very much. Yeah.